So yeah, we're going live now. So yes, we're live. I'm here with my new friend Jared. Jared, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Nice to meet you. You're a young man. I didn't know what to expect, but it's nice to see a strapping young man. And you said you're in Idaho. You're gonna tell us the whole story before we get into what you're up to today, about your faith journey. I know you have an interesting journey, so just sort of walk us through it from early childhood, family life, and we're live, so use discretion when talking. Don't say anything too stupid, but tell us the highs and lows of what makes you who you are today and what you believe today.
Sure, yeah, I'm born and raised in southeastern Idaho, Idaho Falls, and my family's Mormon. There's a lot of Mormons in southeastern Idaho because it's right by Utah,
Ah,
and yeah, so we've got 6 kids. That's a Catholic and Mormon thing that they share. Is we have a lot of kids too,
yeah.
but we I don't know, pretty normal upbringing. Mormon church is, I mean, it's 3 hours long every Sunday, which can be kind of a pain.
Wow.
Well, so it used to be. Now they've actually changed it to 2. But you have your big your sacrament meeting, right, where you take the bread and the water.
Yeah.
Mormons don't drink, so they only use water, not wine. And then after that, you split into your age group for Sunday school, and then after that, you split into gender segregated classes, the Relief Society and the Elders Quorum.
What gender
Um,
are you? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I forgot to put the pronouns in the bio. Hope that's okay.
Yeah.
No, but they do a lot. Mormonism has a very tight knit community. I don't know, they're pretty good about community, and but they also keep you very busy. There's that, and then you also do seminary. Is Since there's such a dense population of Mormons here, we'll have like a seminary building outside a lot of high schools, so that
Ah.
you can go. You take a release time course. So it's basically, it doesn't count for a high school credit. It's just you get an hour off, but you go to the seminaries, and so it's daily church pretty much at that point. And then you have your activities on Tuesday. You have your mutual. That's what it's called. And it's where you get together with um, the other boys your age or girls your age and do, I don't know. It's either something fun or sometimes it's something lame. But yeah, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and we were all raised Mormon. And when you're Mormon, once you, it's 18 now, but when I was uh, growing up, it was when you're 19 years old. If you're a boy, you can choose. Well, you're pretty pressured into going on a mission, being one of those missionaries with a name tag that knocks on doors and everything like that. And you don't get to choose where you go. You just tell them, I want to go, and they send you somewhere. And so I did that at 19. I got sent to Brazil. So
Oh.
I spent 2 years knocking on doors in Brazil, asking people if they wanted to swap religions out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't like it very much. I'm not a very good salesman. And
Yeah. So what happened? Did you leave the faith completely? What was the reaction of the so-called church and all that stuff?
so I after I got back from my mission, I went to BYU, Idaho. That's a Mormon church ran
Mm,
university,
mhm.
and I met my wife there. Another stereotype about Mormons is that we get married very quickly, very young, and so uh, I hadn't even been back from my mission for a year before I met and married a woman.
Nice.
And so it was pretty shortly after that I sort of left Mormonism. And I mean, I guess you could still say I'm technically a Mormon because they still have me on the records. You can ask to get your records removed if you'd like. It's effectively excommunicating yourself, but I guess I never really saw a need to. A lot of people like doing that because it helps them feel free or whatever. But um, so I just had a couple friends that had left, and I asked them why they left, and well, here's some information. And there's a lot of stuff about the Book of Mormon itself. It makes a lot of material claims that are pretty falsifiable. Like
Yeah.
a lot of things that, because it takes place in the Americas, roughly the same time period as the Old and New Testament, and it's the whole idea is that some Jewish family escaped Jerusalem before it was destroyed or whatever, and they built a boat, crossed the sea, and then populated. And there was a couple other groups of people. One of the groups of people that came, they were actually called the Jaredites, and they came
Ah,
over in these weird, they're like wooden submarines, basically, is
cool.
what the story was. And so when you really start to dig into it, there's a lot that just can't really be true about the Book of Mormon. It's it talks about battles that happen roughly in like upstate New York where millions of people died, and there's just like, obviously there would be like a sword or something you'd find, but there's just nothing there. There's also the way that Joseph Smith, he's the founder of the Mormon Church, the way that he sort of went about practicing polygamy. I mean, I'm not a fan of polygamy. It's always kind of something you deal with when you're a Mormon. You just kind of, you say, well, that happened, and you kind of just try to ignore it, or at least
Yeah.
I did. Some people can, some people find it all right, I guess. But he also he kind of broke his own rules with polygamy. One of the rules that he laid out in his scripture was that you've got to, yeah, you can be a polygamist, but you got to let the first wife know first that you're going to get married. But he didn't. Usually he would kind of do it behind her back, or there was a couple of women that he supposedly married and then but didn't tell her about, and later held a fake marriage ceremony in
Oh,
front of his wife so that she thought that she had permission. Just a lot of kind of dishonest things like that. And I think that the Mormon Church is a pretty good religion. I think it's very good for community building and stuff like that. It was a good way to be raised. They have good values and stuff like that. I just
yeah.
couldn't stick with it because I felt like it very unconvinced in its claims.
Yeah. So, what's the situation with your wife? Is she
She left it too.
she left the church
She,
too? Okay.
yeah. Well, it was pretty difficult because for, I don't know, a good 3 or 4 years, she still wanted to stay faithful, and that's very tough because, again, when you're a Mormon, you get married in the Mormon temple, right? That's separate from the regular church houses. The temple, you have to go through steps to be worthy or whatever to enter the temple. You get married there, and that's where you're married for eternity, right? So if you get married, that's why you have to marry a Mormon. I think it's generally a good idea to marry within your religion, I guess, but
Yeah. Yeah.
with Mormonism, that's that whole added thing. Like, you have to, otherwise you're not going to be together in heaven. And so that was very difficult for her, obviously, because I'm leaving this religion, and that wasn't part of the deal, and now she's getting her eternity stripped away from her,
Yeah.
and so it was pretty rough on her. And I tried to be as objective as possible. I didn't want her to think that, like, she was stupid for believing today what I believed yesterday. And so I think the best way to handle that kind of situation is, like, I'm the one that changed the paradigm here. Obviously, I'm the one that left the religion, so obviously I have to be totally okay with the fact that she could be Mormon for the rest of our marriage. And I got to the point where I was okay with that, but then she left it. So now it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are you today, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm 32.
Oh, okay. You look a lot younger.
I got
Uh,
baby fat
so
face.
you're friends with my friend Christopher Rice. He's in the live chat now. He says hello.
Yeah, yeah. Christopher watches. I do a little podcast with some of my friends where we talk about. One of them's Mormon. The rest of us are ex-Mormon. We talk more about cultural things, but sort of from a Mormon / ex-Mormon point of view, I guess.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool, cool. You didn't give me the link for that. Do you want to tell me the website and all, or whatever you have
Oh,
for the,
yeah. It's just on YouTube. If you just type in Porch Time, Chris Hanna
okay,
is
Porch
the
Time,
new.
Porchtime.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll put the link for that in the description.
yeah. I mean, we're a rowdy bunch. We're very I don't know. It's really loud and sweary, so I don't
Crass.
know. Yeah, it's very crass, but I don't know. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, Christopher is constantly kind of participating in the Mormon and ex-Mormon world. He seems very curious about religion in general.
Yeah, yeah. I find that strange because I have a really bad bias against uh, the LDS worldview. I just think it's silly and ridiculous. The people are lovely though. Like
Yeah,
you
they're
said,
great. I live in a
it's
very
just
Mormon neighborhood, and they're great neighbors.
excellent people, excellent people. I've met some. They are actually diverse people. I mean, each one is unique and special, and you know, they're they're not just like the Borg, like, completely brainwashed to believe the exact same thing. They're not. They're free thinkers in there, and they're people who have unorthodox ideas about what the LDS religion is. And I've met transhumanists. I've met uh, um, what's the word? Idealists who don't believe, you know, uh, that matter is actually as fundamental to LDS as is typically stereotypically the case.
Yeah.
Because you don't have in the LDS the immaterial soul and these sorts of things that we have in Christianity. Are you sympathetic at all to Christianity or Judaism or Islam or any of the monotheistic religions? Or
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think so. I'm not a religious guy myself. I call myself sort of an unaffiliated theist, basically, at this point.
okay,
Um, and I've been to several religions. Like we went to a Baptist church. I went to a Catholic mass in Brazil when I was on
okay,
my mission. And my wife's taken her kids to mass a couple times.
nice,
But we're kind of starting to see the value in religion
yeah,
because I don't know. One of the big issues with ex-Mormons is they kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
yeah.
When oftentimes when they leave, they become very angry. They almost all become atheists of some sort,
Like Aaron
and
Ra, he's an ex-Mormon.
yeah, he is. And they'll I don't know. It's all of a sudden, oh, okay, the Mormon Church is wrong. That means they were wrong on abortion. Now I'm okay with abortion or whatever. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Or they're they're wrong, so that means they're wrong on just having a very sort of like having sex before marriage constantly, being a very loose lifestyle like that,
Mm.
and they I don't know that a lot of them are getting into like polyamory and things like that,
Oh, okay.
and so that's a lot about what we talk about on that podcast is how I think the Mormon Church sets them up for that though, kind of because they'll they do a lot to sort of I don't know if you listen to a Mormon talk about other like about Christianity, oftentimes they'll sound like they have the same criticisms as atheists do of Christianity because they'll say things like they'll make fun of the Trinity, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that just totally doesn't make any sense. That's so dumb. How could they be three people? Who was Jesus praying to if he was, just one guy? And I'm like, okay, but they never really they never really count on the fact that you will then take that sort of deconstructionist mindset and turn it around and apply it to Mormonism. It's actually Mormonism is very vulnerable to that because like I said, it has a lot of very material claims that it makes.
Yeah, absolutely. I came to God and religion after 25 years of atheism. I was born and raised Protestant. Excuse me. But I left the faith at age 14. Excuse me, I just muted to cough there.
Oh,
I've
you're
been
good.
sick. I've been sick for a couple of weeks. That's why my
Oh,
voice is a
bummer.
bit crackly. Excuse me. But the thing about Christianity, when I came to God and religion, it's all about God the Father, and you know, um, of course, I was very critical as an atheist of the Bible, especially the Old Testament. But when I discovered who God is, and I started learning about Christianity, um, things that I used to make fun of in the Old Testament, for example, I no longer make fun of them because I just know at base I have a solid foundation. I know that God is good, and I know that the interpretation of these stories is going to depend on your worldview. It's basically going to depend on your metaphysics. Like what do you think is happening? Like what is
Sure.
true and what is who are you? Like who are you as a human? Like are you an evolved ape or are you a child of God? Like it really shapes how you're going to come to the Bible. And there are things in the Bible that in the Christian Bible that make me uncomfortable, but
Sure.
I don't worry about them because my faith is not in some uncomfortable story. My faith is in you know, God, and God is good. And so I think,
Sure.
the problem with Mormonism is that they don't have the metaphysics right. So, yeah, they have a stupid story, but they also have a stupid God. Like, that's the difference. You know what I mean? No offense to my LDS friends, but it's stupid. It's silly. It's like Scientology. It's just nonsense. You know,
Yeah.
because the metaphysics is wrong. So,
What do you mean by the metaphysics? You just
well,
like the Trinity stuff like that?
the LDS conception of God is nonsense. Like their God is a material God subject to change. And we in the monotheistic religions, we worship the uncaused first cause.
Sure.
If you study philosophy at all, you'll run into some metaphysics, and metaphysics is all about ontology and of course epistemology, but more so ontology and what is and how did it come
Hmm.
to be, and cause and effect and stuff like that. So a lot of people today are all excited about the natural sciences. They like physics and chemistry and biology and all that. But underneath the natural sciences is metaphysics. There are philosophical principles upon which the natural sciences are built. And it's some of those philosophical principles that can bring us to the knowledge of God, the one true God, not the God of Mormonism. It'll destroy the God of Mormonism if you start thinking about philosophy. So, have you done any in-depth reading into the philosophical side of religion?
Um, I mean, I've not a whole lot about the philosophy. Last year I got really into Dostoevsky
Nice.
and read a ton of his books, and he gets pretty philosophical.
Yeah,
He talks a lot about the psychology and stuff behind it.
yeah,
I yeah, I loved that Grand Inquisitor. Obviously, everybody loves that, and the Brothers Karamazov. That's a pretty cool. Um, I don't know, but I guess you're right with the issue with the Mormon God is that he's not really an uncaused first cause because he was once like us is the whole idea. So
yeah,
then you're still left with the question of okay, well, who was the uncaused first cause? Like, I think it's all of it. And what they'll say if you get into like really deep Mormon doctrine, it gets kind of wacky, obviously, and so they'll try to say that none of this is doctrine, but there's a lot of Joseph Smith's teachings and stuff. He talked about like this substance called an intelligence, right? And that's the part of us that always existed outside of God, right? So like God made our soul and later our bodies, but before that we were an intelligence or whatever. It's weird. So they don't talk about it much in the normal stuff because it's understandably it's kind of wacky. and
yeah.
they'll because like one of the guys, Cleon Skousen had this. He was a high-ranking Mormon authority in I think the 60s or 70s, and he had this pretty intense idea about the atonement of Christ. He said that it's essentially these intelligences are in every matter. It's almost like he
Mm,
believed that an intelligence is like an atom, basically. He didn't outright say that, but he's saying that's why Jesus is able to have power. Like that's how he can turn water to wine is because the intelligences respect him so much that when he says transmute, they do it. And that the whole idea behind his atonement was that um, if like those intelligences would burn us up if we entered the presence of God. And Jesus was willing to suffer so much that they were like, you know what? All right, I guess if you want him in, then you can let him in. And most Mormons kind of reject that, right? Like even like high ranking Mormon officials, they say, well, that's kind of nonsense because that makes it sound like salvation is a popularity contest and God is sort of beholden to these intelligences. He's got to keep them happy so he can continue being
right.
omnipotent.
Exactly. Yeah. And I asked one of my Mormon guests, I've only had about six or so, but I asked one if the current top dog, God the Father, as you refer to him, if he was insurpassable, or if it's possible in theory that someone could evolve to such an extent that they would overtake him in rank and in goodness and in perfection. And he admitted that although he doesn't think it will happen, he thinks it's theoretically possible. So this is the problem with the metaphysics of the Mormons, is they have a changeable God that, if you're changing states, first of all, it means you're composed. So there's a cause that's higher than you that composed you. But even
Yeah.
beyond that, if you're subject to change, you're getting more or less perfect all the time because you're in
Mm.
flux. You're in flux. So I appreciated the honesty of this Mormon when he admitted to me that, yeah, well, God's top dog now, God the Father, but it's possible to be surpassed, or that he could fall. And so, I mean, that's the nature of change. That's why we don't worship the creation. We worship the Creator, who is pure spirit, who's not subject to change. Because otherwise, you're stuck saying, well, yeah, he's here today, gone tomorrow. He's good today, but tomorrow he might be evil, or he might cease to exist, because he's composed. He's composed of essence and existence. Whereas our God, the God of the monotheists, is not composed at all. His essence is existence, and so it's completely different league, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting way to frame it. I see, because I always grew up getting flack from Christians that would tell us, "Well, you're not Christian," and I'd always be like, "Yeah, we are. We believe that Christ died for our sins," and obviously there's people define Christianity in different ways or whatever. But generally they would tell me like, well, you guys think that Jesus and Satan are brothers. I was like, well, yeah, we believe everybody is brother, but you guys believe that you don't believe in the Trinity. And I was like, well, that doesn't, I mean, maybe we're wrong about that, but I don't know. We can still be Christian and be wrong about that. But I don't know that that makes more sense to me, that why most Christians will get pretty up in arms about the way that Mormons frame God.
Yeah, they didn't articulate it possibly as philosophically as what I'm doing. So maybe it's helping you to understand the antagonism. But yeah, that I think intuitively Christians realize there's a big difference. There's a uh, categorical difference there between your God and our God, and there definitely is. And it's all about the metaphysics. It's all about being, and um, and so, yeah, it's a game changer for sure. That's why you're not even monotheist, much less, when I say you, I just mean your community there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you're not even monotheist, so you can't be a Christian if you're not a monotheist. There are Unitarian Christians, like the Unitarians. They believe that, there's only one person in the Godhead, but most Christians are Trinitarian Christians. But the Unitarians and the Trinitarians are both monotheists. So that's the foundation, is that uncaused first cause, whose essence
yeah.
is existence. It's the one and only necessary being. Every other being is contingent. You and I are contingent. And so, yeah, that's really the foundation. And a lot of people obviously haven't studied philosophy as I have, so they're maybe unaware, but they might still have an intuition that something's up, you know.
Sure. See, I haven't really dug much into the critiques of Mormonism that sort of drove me away from it were all more sort of like material things you would
Right.
hear, like your common, any atheist saying. It never the I never really got into the Christian critiques of it. And I think really what it was is back in the day, Mormonism kind of used to embrace its weirdness a lot more. Like, and then about I think it was like around the 1920s, about when what's it called? Prohibition happened was when, because before that Mormons could drink alcohol. They had that word of wisdom, right, that said we advise you against drinking alcohol, but you could do it. But then when prohibition happened, that was at the same time where like one of that current prophet, I think it was Joseph F. Smith at the time, who said, okay, now it's a commandment, we can't drink alcohol. And he really wanted to merge Mormonism with mainstream Christianity. And
Wow.
that's, you kind of notice that they're going in that direction more and more. Like they don't like the word Mormon anymore. That was the current prophet. That's his hill to die on. We're not Mormons. We're Latter-day Saints.
What is the word Mormon? What is the origin of that word?
So the obviously it comes from the Book of Mormon. Mormon was a prophet in the Book of Mormon. He's the one that compiled all the records
Oh, I
because
didn't know
the
that. Okay.
yeah. So he had obviously I think it starts the Book of Mormon starts at about 800 BC. I'm pretty sure, and then it ends um a few hundred years after Christ because there's actually a moment in it's toward the end of the Book of Mormon where Christ comes to the Americas and talks to the Nephites and Lamanites. Those are the people in the Book of Mormon. So Mormon took all these records from those, uh, hundreds and hundreds of years, and he compiled them into what that's the story anyway. And then his
Yeah.
son Moroni was one of the last living Nephites, and he wandered around until he got to upstate New York, where he buried that the golden plates, and where Joseph Smith claimed he found them in the 1800s.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, as I said before, if you're just looking to poke fun at the stories or legends or myths of any religion, it's pretty easy pickings. If you're an enemy of any religion, it's easy to make fun of their holy books, I think.
Yeah.
I was doing that as an atheist for 25 years. It's just fun and it's easy, right? But yeah, there's more to religion than just the strange stories. There's a lot more to it. It's a lot deeper than that. And one of our famous saints in the Catholic Church, Saint Augustine, said that Christians don't even need the Bible. What we need is faith, hope, and love. These are the theological virtues. Faith, hope, and love. So, and the Bible's there to instruct those who haven't arrived at, you know, a pure life where they're living with God and in God and for God. And so, religion is to the atheist it seems very complex, but to the person who's trying to have a relationship with God, it's the difficulty of the faith life is how simple it is. It's like you have to give yourself to God, your creator, who is mysterious. This God that created us is mysterious. Yes, we can know that he's good and we can know that he's just and we can know all kinds of things, but he remains a mystery. And if you're married, you've been married for a few years now, you know that your wife, you love her and you can talk about her, you can list off a bunch of stuff about her, but she's mysterious. She is a mystery. She will
Sure.
surprise you. She has stuff going on inside of her mind and her soul that you haven't figured out. And sorry to tell you, you're not going to figure it out. It's going to remain a mystery because it's deep. It's deep. So it's the same thing with religion. It's a relationship, it's romantic, it's a leap of faith, it's an adventure, and it's not just a bunch of dusty old books with stupid stories in them.
For sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's not.
It is. I don't think I ever would have called myself an atheist, but at one, like I might as well have been, because for, a good 5 or 6 years after leaving the Mormon church, I was about as snarky as you possibly could be toward most religion, and I'm kind of coming around. It's sort of just seeing the state of the world and researching, where religion actually comes from, whether or not it's true. It's something that makes sense that humans would want and need. We're very social creatures, and we learn better through stories than we do through actually being told. Like, I mean, we've got the "He who is without sin cast the first stone" is a great story, and it gives the message in a way that resonates with billions of people, obviously. And you can either do that with the story, or you can say, um, "Don't hurt people." Like that. No, that's not gonna stick. If you just say, I don't know. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, uh, the parables you could I don't know if you spend time reading the Christian Bible or not, but the New Testament is the sort of document, especially the Gospels and the parables of Christ in particular are things where you could revisit it time and time again and you'll get a fresh perspective.
Mhm.
And that is true with a lot of texts. It's not only the Bible, but the Bible is unique. and I believe that it is inspired and it is special and it is inerrant. And you know, you can because it's not just a list of dogmas. Like I've got my list of dogmas here. This is relatively dry reading, right? Compared to the Bible, like you can revisit the Bible time and time again and get something new out of it, something fresh and something that applies to today. And you know, God's
Sure.
pretty smart, so he knew
Mhm.
giving us a dry list of to dos and not to dos or whatever wasn't quite the same, gonna have the same impact for sure.
Yeah, see, I read through the Bible one time, which is pretty intense because they just put so much more emphasis on the Book of Mormon. They
Oh, is that right?
yeah. It's so Mormons believe in the Bible. Um, they believe that the subtext of the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. So it's like a third one, you know. And so they, I, I remember bringing it up before, saying like, well, maybe I should read the Bible more because I've read the Book of Mormon a bunch of times, and I haven't even read the Bible through once. Plus, I'm about to go on a mission, and they're like, "Well, yeah, I mean, Bible's good. Focus on the Book of Mormon, though." And part of that is because obviously there's some truth to the fact that the Bible has been translated and retranslated, and I'm sure some people have, through ill intent, taken things out
Yeah,
that's what I was told as a Mormon always. You know that
yeah,
there's translation errors. The Book of
yeah.
Mormon only translated one time. So obviously it's more true, is what they would say. It's not tainted in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, and I believe, because it's a dogma of my faith, that the Bible is inerrant. But the punchline to that joke is that no one's ever seen it. No one's ever seen the inerrant Bible here below in this sick fallen world. All we
Mm,
have are fallible translations of fallible copies of fallible manuscripts. That's what we have. Like if you go
mhm.
to the bookstore and buy a nice Catholic Bible, it's not the inerrant Bible that you bought. It's a fallible Bible that you bought. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you. That's the way it is. That's the world we live in. That's the way God ordained it. Okay? And so when the non-Catholic Christians go to their Bible and they claim to derive infallible doctrine by the Holy Spirit from this fallible book, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. You need a church. Christ came to earth and he instituted a church. The church is infallible. You aren't. You know, you are, to the extent that you're part of the church and that you have that sensus fidelium, the sense of the faithful. That, yeah, that's inerrant. So I can walk around in daily life or on my podcast, I can regurgitate the dogmas of the church. I can say God is triune. There are three persons in the Trinity, in the Godhead, and that's an infallible statement. I'm participating in a passive way. I have a passive infallibility because I'm a member of the church. I submit to the church. I didn't come up with the Trinity. I would never come up with the Trinity. It seems like a stupid doctrine, right? I
Yeah, yeah,
submit to the church and the church tells me God is triune. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I don't think it contradicts reason, but it's not intuitive. It's not natural. It's not like, what are you stupid?
sure.
You don't know that God's triune? You know, so this is what it's about. It's about submission to the God who took on flesh, came to earth, and built a church. And where's the church? And what does the church teach? That's why I'm Catholic today. That's why I submit to the teachings, many of which I don't understand. But like I said, they're not contrary to reason, these teachings. These teachings go beyond my reason because I have to admit, I'm fallible. If I had to make up a religion, it would be silly. If I
Mhm.
made up my own religion based on what I thought was true, it would be silly. And we see that happening with Scientology and LDS and everything else.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and there's also, I mean, obviously, there's some wisdom that you probably can't immediately see. Like, I mean, there's stories from a few thousand years ago where they didn't understand germ theory or anything like that, but they said like, oh, God says not to defecate upstream of the camp in the water, or he'll smite you or whatever. Which,
Yeah.
true or not, I mean, it obviously is true because like it's
Yeah.
bad for you. They didn't know why it was bad for you. They just know that bad things happen. So they might say, well, God commands it to be this way. And so obviously there's some it's probably very arrogant of us to assume that we just kind of know everything that is wrong and why it is wrong.
Well, yeah, that brings up another point, which is, Aaron Ra is always telling me that, because I interviewed him twice. He's telling me that God's mean guy, he's a bully and whatever, and he did genocide and whatever. It's like, well, what my church doesn't oblige me to have an opinion about, this or that genocide in the Old Testament. It's not it's open for interpretation. I mean, what I'm not allowed to do is to say, well, maybe God's not good. That's not an option. I know God's good. I don't even need religion to tell me that God's good. I have philosophy that tells me that God's good. So, when there's some story about, some violence against the enemies of the people of God or whatever in the Old Testament, I just take it for what it is, and I'll find out on Judgment Day who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, and where was the justice, and where was the injustice. And I already know in advance that the blame will be laid at the feet of fallible humans, not at the feet of God. So, I
Sure.
mean, I don't know. I can't tell you, I can't defend every passage in the Old Testament and say, no, this was justified, this is good, this is good, this is good. I can't do that. It's a messy story, and a lot of the stuff in there, we're gonna find out that it was like, okay, maybe in the Bible, maybe it was portrayed as like, yeah, yeah, this is, God told us to do this or whatever. And then on Judgment Day, God's gonna show us how that was just, attributed to God, right? And one
Sure.
example that I like to use is divorce. You may not think divorce is a big deal. I think it's a big deal, but
I think it's a
my
pretty big
church
deal.
says my church says don't do it. You know, and what Jesus said is, well, what did Moses say about divorce? And the Jews of his day said, well, Moses said we could issue a certificate of divorce for these reasons. And Jesus said, well, that was a concession. That was a concession that was made to you because you're a stiff-necked people. You're a weak people. So that's happening. If that's happening once with Moses, we can imagine in the Old Testament that it's full of stuff where they're attributing to God. Yeah, God told me to do this, God told me to do that. And it turns out, well, that was just a concession that was made to you because you're weak. So,
Sure.
so all of this to say that many of the attacks against my religion, Christianity, and even Judaism, can be defended just by saying, well, we don't know what's a concession, what's not. But we do know that God is good.
Well, and you also, I don't know. Like I said, it's almost those attacks are almost assuming that like I know the entire context around why this scripture is here. I know the entire. We've figured out all of morality, and they're wrong about this because like one of the big ones that atheists always throw out is like, oh, there's a chapter that tells you how you should treat your slaves.
Slaves.
Why didn't they just say that slavery is bad or whatever? Like, well, do you know what would happen to a religion that said you're not allowed to own slaves? And it wouldn't have happened. The religion would have died, right? And so if slaves are a thing that exist in real life, then there ought to be a code for like I don't know. Would you rather a society that treats its slaves with a certain amount of dignity, or a society that doesn't? And because sometimes those are your only two options. Obviously, now in the West, we view slavery as abhorrent, and it's awesome that we've done that. We don't do slavery anymore, so we don't really need instructions on how to treat our slaves because thankfully we've sort of grown past that. And I don't know if are you familiar with Eric Weinstein?
No. Oh,
So
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, tell me about it.
he's he goes on, he talks to like Jordan Peterson a lot, those guys. He's he's atheist, but he like is a practicing Jew still.
Okay.
And so one of the things that he mentioned, and he's actually a pretty, he kind of defends the Bible in a lot of ways. Like he mentioned how one of the things that atheists bring up a lot is that there's a scripture I think in Exodus where it explains that you can bring, if your child is disobedient, you can bring him before a judge, and the judge can tell you whether or not to stone him to death or whatever. And we always
Right.
talk about how terrible that was. And he said, but you guys don't understand the context of that. The context is that before that, then it was just the parent deciding to stone them to death. Where we
Right.
have a whole extra layer of mitigation. So that probably results in less kids being stoned to death.
Right.
And obviously in humanity, progress needs to be made incrementally. It
Yeah.
can only be that way. It has to be. If we go too fast on anything, we're probably going to overshoot the mark.
Yeah. It was Brett Weinstein that I'd heard of, not his brother Eric, I guess. So, but I hadn't really followed either. but it's the same thing with eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. People say that's brutal, but that was a step up. It used to be that it was overkill with the reaction. It wasn't moderated, it wasn't mitigated. So yeah, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Yeah, in Christianity, we've gone even further than that. But at that time, that was quite conservative. That was quite restrained. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
People overlook that. And I did want to say, I just want to say for the record, I don't believe that slavery is in the past. I think there are more sophisticated forms of slavery today that God is concerned about, and God wants to talk to big corporate heads and say, well, look, maybe you should treat your cogs in your wheel as humans, and don't just treat them as numbers. And be fair to your employees. And it's a different form of slavery, but I see a lot of slavery happening in our modern world, even in the Western world. Not to mention, the sex trade and all this sort of the capturing of kids for the sex trade and these sorts of things that allegedly happen. I don't know. I'm not involved, but I've heard, and there've been movies made about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
slavery is not gone, but it's a different, things have changed, things are different, and I would say they're better, but in a lot of ways, things are worse. Like, I don't think they had the pornography back in Jesus' day that we have today. It's
No.
ubiquitous. It's ubiquitous, and the kids are being touched by this in a way that I don't think they were in Jesus' day.
Oh, yeah, so that's a big one. That's something I actually think the Mormon Church wildly mishandles is anything to do with sex and pornography because they I don't think porn is a good thing. And I think they're right about that. But they also kind of tell you that like it's the it's the sin next to murder basically. It's kind of what they tell you about any sort of sexual sin, and I don't know, they're just not good at talking about it. They kind of, when I was growing up anyway, they acted like nobody does that, obviously. So, and I'm a millennial, I was exposed to I was exposed to hardcore porn I'm thinking like first grade,
Wow.
like on the
Wow.
internet, and
Wow.
it might have even been before that, but and so I'd go to a dial-up connection and I just look at it because I knew that sex was a word that I wasn't supposed to know about, and I just www.sex.com like a
Yeah.
little, like an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
and so I think Mormonism doesn't deal with it well, but I also think that sort of secular society is just completely permissible of it, and we're acting like it's just something that has no negative effects at all. We're sexually liberated or whatever, and like I think we're just now starting to see exactly how much that messes people up being exposed to that at such a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. I was exposed probably at the time of puberty, and just by happenstance or whatever, I stumbled upon a collection of this stuff. It was physical documents, like
Yeah.
magazines, which is old school. But I was born in '70, so.
Yeah.
But I'm scarred. I'm scarred for life. Like, I'm wounded. I'm fucked up. Excuse my language. Because of it. Um, you know, Chronic masturbation for decades, and
Oh, for sure.
it's disgusting. I'm not proud of it. I don't think it's a virtue. I think it's a vice, and my church teaches me it's sinful. It may not be gravely sinful because of the force of habit and all the circumstances. We can't be cruel. We can't be cruel to the
Sure.
men and women. I guess it's more men than women that fall prey to this, I guess. But
Yeah.
the women are guilty too because they're selling their bodies and selling their souls. It's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Why would a woman do that? Why would a woman do that? But I understand. I'm not gonna blame them. But
Sure. I mean, it's a two-part thing. I think it's sold to them as this thing that it is an easy way to make a lot of money, which
yep,
it isn't.
yeah. Oh, it's
They
not
almost all of them don't make any money, and then
really.
oh yeah,
Oh, really?
if you look at OnlyFans, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's almost all of what's made on OnlyFans. The money is made by like the top like half a percent of the content creators.
So they're being sold a dream and they're just putting it out there, hoping to live the dream, and that it doesn't come true.
Oh yeah, it's I mean, it does for a very select few of them, but most of them don't earn anything. You can see 'em I mean, you go to, like, the subreddit for OnlyFans where it's people who do OnlyFans and they're trying to they talk about the issues with it, and I mean, you'll see women on there saying, like, "I only made $200 this month," and
Oh my God.
they're
So then
selling
why do
themselves
it?
for nothing. It's pretty insane, but the other half of that is that they've been told that it's liberating, They've been told that, like, this is how you reclaim your feminine sexuality or whatever.
My friend Martin's in the live chat. He says he read that the average OnlyFans girl makes something like $80 a week.
Yeah, it's
That's
seriously, it's
that's
very, very low.
that's pathetic. I mean, oh God, what a world, what a sick world we live in. But it's I don't want to blame anyone. I mean, men are horny and they like looking at women. I can sympathize with that a little bit more than with the other side, like the women. I don't understand, but especially if they're not making money. I thought they were all making money, like lots of money.
Oh,
You know.
no, not
Oh
hardly at
my
all. And
God.
that's kind of one of the problems with a lot of ex-Mormons is that the sexuality is so, I think, mishandled in Mormonism that when they leave it, they go so ballistic in the other direction. I mean, I was in this ex-Mormon group the other day, and this woman got on there anonymously, and she was talking about how her and her husband are in a very happy marriage with 3 kids, but they're wanting to branch out, basically, and become swingers or
Oh,
or
oh.
do all sorts of debauchery. And she's like, "Do you think it's a good idea? I'm actually like, it sounds adventurous and exciting, but I'm afraid that I'll mess up my marriage." And I usually don't. I'm usually not super serious on those pages, but I was like, "Don't do it." I mean, come on. Like, even if you think it could work out, it could only work out for the most kind of like the most emotionally damaged people. And if you're one of the very, very select few people that can handle that kind of jealousy and nonsense, like, if you have a good marriage, why risk it? And not just that, but risk you'll probably get divorced, and that's terrible on kids. And I mean, that's another lie that we try to tell people is that kids are resilient. They're okay if you get divorced. I'm like, look, I think there's circumstances under which divorce is a viable option, but I think almost, I don't know, probably 90% of the divorces out there are not those cases.
Yeah. I don't want to get too dark, but Satan is real from my perspective, and I'm wondering because you seem open and sort of like a de facto you know, theist of some sort, maybe
Sure.
a generic theist of some sort. I'm just wondering if you've put much thought into the spiritual battle for your soul, for your individual soul, much less, your family, because you're the guardian of your family in a spiritual way too. But what would it profit you if you gain the whole world and lose your own soul? So, really, it really starts with you, with keeping care not only of your mind and your body, but of your soul, and making sure that Satan and his demons don't lure you into sin and into hatred of God or whatever, God or neighbor. So, are you aware of the spiritual battle? Are you aware of the dark side? Do you get tempted, and do you see Satan at work, and do you have dark dreams? Like, what's the dark side like for you?
I wouldn't say I have dark dreams generally. I mean, I have some recurring dreams that say a lot about my psychology, but I think whether or not there is a Satan, sort of there's a reason so many people believe in a Satan, and because it does feel when you see something just nuts happening, it feels like there's a very real entity that's trying to ruin something for everyone. And I, generic theist probably does accurately describe me. And honestly, part of that is reading all that Dostoevsky was helpful. Read a bunch of C.S. Lewis. Listened to um, a lot of debates that I really liked. But I think the thing that actually really kind of pushed me over the edge was I actually do try to pray, and
Nice.
it's really awkward, it's because it starts off with me I mean, not anymore, but when I started doing it, it would be like, okay, well, God, I mean, if you're there, and I don't, you might be there. I don't know. It's this awkward preamble where I'm like, I don't want to look stupid if I'm talking to no one. I'm like, well, if you're talking to no one, then nobody's ever going to know that you look stupid doing it. So just do it. But it's actually kind of been helpful. It's not like a super directed prayer, and it's kind of basically in the way that I did as a Mormon growing up. It's a conversation, and you close it in the name of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I don't really consider myself a Christian. I just have a lot of I do enjoy the Christian worldview for the most part. But it's actually very helpful. I can wake up and I can go through, a list of things I'm grateful for, and make certain promises, like I am not going to lie today or something like that. And it's actually, it's the only thing that's ever really gotten me to be a real person. It got me to go to the gym. I hate the gym, but if I start the morning with a prayer promising to actually go to the gym, then I'm like, well, I said I'd do it to God. I can't, now I gotta do it.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the times people think that the best Christian or the best theist or whatever is the one that's, got all the good habits, and the prayer life is rich and easy, and but what he wants for you and for me is to struggle. God wants us to struggle. He wants us to struggle and to grope and to find. That's the exciting part. The exciting story is not, hey, I'm perfect. My prayers are perfect. That's not an exciting story. Sorry. Even when Jesus came, he said, I didn't come for the righteous. Like, if you're perfect, move out of the way, because I'm here for the prostitutes and the tax collectors. I'm not here
Sure,
for
yeah.
you if you're perfect. And if you claim that you already see, then I'm going to hold you to that. You have a good vision, you understand, okay, you're going to teach me. That's kind of the attitude Jesus had for these self-righteous people. And that's who his enemies were the Pharisees and those who were self-righteous. So when you admit that your prayers are awkward, or they used to be, or whatever, that's what God wants. That's what it's about. That's what a relationship is about. Same thing with your physical wife. If it were all easy and you didn't even need to think about it, how much value does that relationship have? But when you have to be careful, oh, what does my wife want? Oh, my wife doesn't like you know coriander, so I'm going to tell my friend, uh, for the surprise party, please don't put coriander in, even though I know you're Mexican, you love coriander. Don't put it in. Like, you're making the effort. You're looking out. There's some awkward
Sure.
situations because you care about your wife and you're trying to please her. It's the same thing with God. You have to struggle, and he sees your efforts, and it's worth so much. And I think about the 2 pence of that old woman. She put everything she had into the money box, the collection box there. For the rich guy, it wasn't meaningful because he's got
Hmm.
so much money. you know. So that's why I like talking to people who are on a journey, people that are, uh, you know, questioning, or on a quest, or uncertain, uncertain.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's actually one of the things I do like about the Catholic Church is the confessional, right? Because
Yeah.
the Mormon higher ups, right? They hired like an out group to like to tell them what they're doing wrong, basically, because they are losing a lot of members right now. And one of the biggest things that out group explained to them was like, you have to emphasize, uh, sorry, you have to emphasize the struggle. And
Uh,
they don't do that. They're actually very bad at that. The only
uh,
real confessional that you have to do as a Mormon is like you can go talk to a bishop to get certain sins taken care
absolved.
of,
Yeah.
but the only sins really are like if you murder someone or sexual sin.
Okay.
So if you are going to the bishop's office, that means something's wrong.
Oh, wow.
And he'll tell you not to take the sacrament for a while. And so if people watch a 15-year-old boy not taking the sacrament, they
Mm.
know exactly what it is. There's so they like, yeah, he's obviously watching porn. There's nothing
Uh,
else it could be, really. And so I do like the idea of the confessional because it's, that's what you're supposed to do. If you're going to confession, something's right, rather than
Yeah,
if you go into
yeah.
the bishop, something's wrong.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's the most beautiful thing. Seriously, it's so amazing, and it's like I'm so grateful for many reasons for the Catholic Church, but the sacrament of reconciliation is so amazing, and like I try to go every week or two. I've been going every week for a couple of weeks now, and it's just this weekend I went on a Saturday evening, and I told the priest like I don't have a lot of sins to confess this week because I've been sick. So like I've been sick, so I haven't been able to sin or anything. But I'm here for the grace. Like I'm here for the encouragement. I'm here to get the blessing. I'm here to and I'm here for my little sins. Like I'm here because I am a glutton. I am lazy. I am, proud and impatient and you know, some people I've met full-grown adults who are Italian Catholics who tell me, "David, I've never sinned. I don't sin." And I'm like, What are you talking about? I can't go
it's
5 minutes without a small sin."
it's funny you
Um,
bring up gluttony because when I remember growing up, there's that atheist snark in me. I would make fun of that, like, oh, you guys think that gluttony is a sin? I mean, yeah, it's probably a bad idea to eat a lot, but and then then I wound up eating Taco Bell every day, and I was like 280 pounds.
wow.
So it's like, okay, okay.
Emotional eating or what?
Oh, I guess I just kind
Addiction?
of addiction. Yeah, I was always snacking on stuff, and so I was like, okay, okay, maybe there's a reason people call gluttony a sin.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, those who are critical of always singling out sin or drawing attention to sin, and they think that some people think that I'm scrupulous or that I'm too worried about sin or whatever. It's like, well, I know my heart, and I know what sin is. Like sin is putting the creature above the creator, and I do that all the time. I do that all the time, and it's not to beat myself up. It's not to say, "Oh, woe is me, I'm so bad." But it's a reality. I just have to be humble and live in reality. The reality is I am lazy, I am selfish, and everything I do for the most part is not to please God, is to please me. And when Christ came, he suffered and died, and he said, I don't want to go on the cross, but God, not my will be done, your will be done. If you could take the cup away from me, take it away from me. But
Yeah, I don't want to do this.
you know so I mean that's how we're supposed to be living. We talked about a little bit about suffering, sacrifice, and the struggle, and it's not to say that we can't enjoy life. Yeah, we can have, especially in the Catholic Church, we smile on even on cigarettes and alcohol in the Catholic Church, in moderation. Like
Hmm.
there was G.K. Chesterton who basically was glorifying booze and cigarettes and just saying it's not a big deal. Maybe he went a little bit too far, but my wife
It was
smokes like a
actually Yeah, it was actually Chesterton that was one of the big. I don't know much about Chesterton, but I do like his analogy of the fence. Like if you see a fence and you don't know why it's there, don't
right.
tear it down until you
Um,
know why it's there. And if it no longer serves a purpose, then yeah, you can go ahead and tear that fence down. But like understand that you don't know everything immediately. I think about that like 3 or 4 times a week, every week.
oh wow, yeah, powerful. I've heard other guests bring that up. It's had a big impact, especially today. Today I mean, I just with my wife driving around on a bicycle downtown Montreal, and they were literally tearing down the statue of one of the heroes of Canada and of Montreal. It's like,
Oh,
why? It's a beautiful statue. And just because, not to bash the left, but because the left is trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do, but it doesn't seem right to me, you know. And the public art that they're producing today is ugly. I'm sorry, it's ugly.
sure,
It's
yeah.
meaningless. It's meaningless, and I don't
Well,
care.
it's intentionally meaningless.
Yeah,
They're doing that on purpose. It's supposed to be ugly, because if you could pretend that something ugly is beautiful, then you don't have to have. I mean, there's that
standards.
modern feminist art where it's just a toilet. It's just there's these videos of after we went to Iran. like us trying to teach feminism to Iranian women
Oh my
and like
God.
showing them our feminist art, and they're just like looking at this toilet and they're just like horrified, like, what is this?
It's ridiculous. It's like when that Walsh guy went to Africa and asked them, what is woman, and can a man give birth or whatever. It's
Like, what are
like
you
the,
talking
the the
about?
Africans had to explain basic biology, like, you know what I mean? It's like we are out of touch in the West, and I see Satan at work in the West, especially. We're so out of touch. We're so wrong about so many things. It's so tragic what we're doing to our children, not just with the education, but with the physical, you know, the brutal surgeries and
Oh
the
yeah.
chemical castrations. It's just like it's mind numbing. If you were to go back 75 years or 100 years, or I don't know how far you got to go back to find people that had common sense, but they'd be shocked. They'd be horrified. How can it change so fast? How can society change so fast?
Well, there's a bunch of people holding you hostage for your virtues, right? Like, because that's what the whole surgery thing. Those parents are all told, if would you rather have a trans daughter or a dead son? They basically tell them there is 100% likelihood that your kid will kill himself if you don't get this
Uh,
done. And so it scares a lot of the parents. There, a lot of them are pretty mentally messed up too, but a lot of them are just scared into it because somebody of authority tells them that's your only option.
yeah. Coercion by governments and by the experts is something we went through 2020, 2021, and
Oh, I don't even want to know what it's like up there. You
oh my
guys,
God.
you guys have got some crazy stuff going on
We've
right
got
now.
some crazy socks, I'll tell you that. Some very colorful socks on a certain Catholic, air quotes, Catholic prime
Does
minister.
he call himself Catholic?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Here's something I didn't know until recently. I did not realize that the prime minister could reschedule the election.
Yeah, yeah, he
That's
pulled that trick.
insane to me.
He pulled that trick last time.
Yeah, I heard that. I did
And,
not know that. That sounds
and he
crazy.
bragged about how he paid off the media, like CBC here's, they get a lot of money from the Liberal Party, and they help to get him elected, and he went to a big dinner with them, and he was making a joke, which was basically a very honest joke, like just saying like, yeah, you're in my pocket kind of thing, and he doesn't even try to hide it. It's sickening. I wish him well. I think he's a sad, sad man, pathetic loser, but I think he's probably a nice guy, whatever, and hopefully he believes in what he's doing, but he's certainly not Catholic. And you got Biden down there.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's not even
I feel
like
sorry for him because he seems like just an old man.
he's
But
just out of it for the most part. I mean, he's done a lot of evil stuff, so I don't feel
yeah,
super terrible for him, but
yeah, yeah. So it's a crazy world. I'm gonna have to wrap it up here, but it's been such a joy meeting you and talking with you. I want to
yeah, it was a
have you
good
back
time.
and talk some more.
Yeah, no problem.
And you didn't get to tell me about your music there. Are you actually active with the band, or are you just a solo artist, or what?
I've got a couple of friends from high school that we'll play together every now and then. I've got the drum set, but I still haven't learned it. I bought it for my
Uh,
brother-in-law. I'm a more of a guitar guy,
okay, that's cool.
but I do want to learn the drums.
Drumming is hard. I think that's really hard
Yeah,
because I have
I got
I
a
have no rhythm.
5-year-old. I got a 5-year-old with perfect pitch. We just found out the other day.
Oh, no
So,
way.
oh yeah, he can tell you any note on the piano even if he's not looking.
No way.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Oh, wow. Is he on
So
the
I got to get
spectrum?
real good at music.
Is he on the spectrum autistic?
So kinda. He did the diagnose, but it's really weird. He's this weird genius. Like he knows he could spell anything from the time he was like 2. He is
Oh,
obsessed with letters and numbers. He's just a
oh,
little genius dude.
yeah.
Also has perfect pitch, but yeah, he's on the spectrum. Yeah,
Oh, so his social skills aren't normal or whatever?
they're a little bit behind. If it's not like an official diagnosis, but I found this thing called hyperlexia, and I've talked to other parents whose kid have hyperlexia, and they're exactly like him.
Cool.
So it's pretty cool.
Very special. Wow. Cool. Get him into the music. Get
I
him into
know.
that
Yeah.
music. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so cool. Wow. So great to meet you.
yeah, you as
Excuse me.
well.
I've been suppressing this frog in my throat for the whole hour, but
Oh man.
stay in touch, and I hope to have you back in the new year. My calendar is jam-packed full till then, but we'll have
Yeah.
plenty more to talk to then, and I really appreciate your calm demeanor and your open perspective on life, and you seem to have a really solid base in terms of, right and wrong and family values and really good stuff. So I have to give credit where credit's to due, to the LDS community. There's a lot of good in there, a lot of good in there, and so I thank them for
Yeah.
raising a nice young man like you.
Sweet. Well, thanks for having me. It's good to meet you.
I hope you'll pray to me in your own way, your own awkward way. Pray for me and mine, and I'll be praying for you and
Sure.
yours. Okay?
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. It was good to meet you.
Good to meet you. God bless you.
See ya.
Bye bye.